Hello there. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's wonderful to see all of you here. So we'll just get started in about a minute or so, but feel free to, yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Emily. I love to see faces, so feel free to, if you're comfortable, to make your camera visible. If not, that's okay too. But also just mute yourselves because yeah, there might be some sound coming from the background. So welcome everyone. It's so great to see you all. Hi, Jeffrey. So good to see you here. Candace, Brittany, Carol, Stephanie, Summer. Wonderful to have you all. Let me share my screen. We'll begin in about 30 seconds or so. Here we are. All right, here we are. And keep an eye on the other folks. Welcome, Riley. Welcome, Holly. So great to see you. So we're just getting started. I know we have about 45 minutes together, so I do want to get to the meat of our discussion today. What a weekend, y'all. What a weekend. I'm there with you. I'm there with you. And I felt very grateful that we've all had this time together. Hi, David. Great to see you here. It's been a tough weekend for many of us, but this is why we kind of come together to really just decompress. And for me, the goal really is just to share a little bit about who I am, what I do, and some ways to manage these troubling times. My hope is that you'll all also have an opportunity to speak with one another and get to know one another in our short time together. So let's begin. And I know some other folks might join us as we continue on. But basically, my name is Gupta. I am a scientist, I'm an educator, I'm a lawyer, and also the founder of Be More with the New. And what we do is we train organizations in breaking bias to advance diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and justice in our workplaces. So our approach is quite integrated, between the head and the heart and our bodies to really support organizations in taking action. And today's topic is quite fresh in all of our minds. After the decision that came out on Friday, we really felt that we need to make the session truly about what to do and how do we prioritize self-care in this changing world. So this is going to be an interactive session, and the only thing I will say is that I don't have all the answers. We may not get healed today, but my aspiration is that we have that goal in mind as we proceed, as we work with one another, as we work with ourselves on this journey. Hi, Joe, welcome. So let's actually begin. We'll begin just as we begin all of our programs. And I'm just going to invite you all to just come to a comfortable seated or standing position wherever you are. And if you're comfortable, you can bring your eyes to a gentle close. And then we'll just be here for a few minutes. Rest your hands on your lap or on your knees. And for the first few moments, just bringing a sense of awareness to your breath, the in-breath and the out-breath. And notice what's happening in the mind. Perhaps there's agitation, worry, planning. That's okay. Whatever it is, whatever feelings there are, emotions there are, thoughts there are, just notice that. Planning, planning, thinking, thinking, worrying, worrying. Really labeling whatever is arising in this moment. And see if you can bring your attention to your breath. Really focusing that awareness to this moment to moment breath that gives us life. If you've just joined us, that's okay. We're just beginning with a short mindfulness exercise. And as you continue to notice this breath of yours, bring your attention to your body. Notice any place in your body that feels tense, that may be holding, perhaps your chest, perhaps your hands, and just softening, making that gentle invitation of relax, release, relax, release. If the mind is distracted, notice what it's doing. For those of you joining us, we're just beginning with a short centering exercise. So just come join us wherever you are. And once again, bringing that awareness to your body. Noticing any place that feels tense. And softening into this present moment, into this body itself. This body that is here, that is present. Feeling a sense of openness in your chest, in your hands, in your feet. Relax, release. And then after your next exhale, you can bring your chin to your chest, stretching the back of your neck. If your eyes were closed, you can open them and come back to our shared space together. So welcome everyone. It's so great to see so many of you, and welcome Zara and Shruti, Riley, Joe, Jana. It's wonderful to have you all here. So for me, this time together is really a time for us to reflect together, heal together, and just share what's happening for us. And I'll just share a quick story in a bit around why we do this work together. But mindfulness is one of these tools. Meditation in particular is one of those tools that really helps us bring clarity to our passion, to why we are, where we are, particularly in this body, in this place. So with that, I'd love for you all to just share in the chat. I know there's quite a few new people, lots of new friends that have joined us. Just, your name and where you're joining us from, as well as, what brought you here? What made you sign up today? I'd love to just welcome everybody, all the bodies and folks that are here. Jeffrey shares, grateful for that beautiful, quiet invocation anew. Perfect, no worries. Love all around. Yes, love is how we begin this. I'm grateful for that. So just sharing your name, your location. As I shared earlier, this will be an interactive session, but this will just help me see where everyone is. My name is Anu. I'm based in New York City. And I really came for you all just to share space in light of the Supreme Court decision as well. So David's from Berkeley, been in confusion and grief around the Supreme Court decision. Wonderful. Thank you for noticing that and sharing that with us. Candace from unceded Lone Territory in Oakland came in for insight and healing. Welcome. Jana, also from New York City, here because of great friends, love, and community. Welcome, Jana. Yeah, so please, a few more. Zara from Tongva Land in Long Beach, California, feeling incredible heartbreak. Yes, we're holding you, Zara. Thank you for sharing. Riley from California, North Coast, needed some community following the SCOTUS decision. Yes, for sure. Stephanie in Boise, Idaho. I'm here as I'm struggling to process this information, what to do next. Wonderful. Thank you, Stephanie. Emily from Cape Cod, Mutual Healing and Community. David from San Francisco. Shruti from Massachusetts. Brittany from New York City as well, Carol from Hawaii, Craving Community and Warmth, welcome, and Tali from Durwood, Maryland. Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you for sharing. It's just wonderful to be here together in community on this day. I really thought that what do we do now in a changing world? So I'll just begin with, just because we're here and all of us are processing so many different emotions and thoughts. So for all of our programs, we just begin with some shared agreements, because this will be interactive and we will break you up in a small group at some point. So just using I statements when we share, I think, I believe, in my experience. And this is really powerful in creating a space that's truly, safe for everyone and that's shame-free. Shame is one of those emotions that prevents us from moving forward because it debilitates us. So I hope we can all agree to that. Commitment to dialogue. Of course, you're here to learn, to grow, to heal, and I'm here with you for that. But just remembering that we're here to really grow together through dialogue, and that requires the twin wings of understanding and compassion, particularly for yourself, really giving yourself the benefit of the doubt. And then also that allows us to give others that understanding and compassion. The third is staying present. We started our time together with a short mindfulness exercise. So just noticing what's happening in your experience, what thoughts arise, what emotions arise, what stories arise, kind of becoming a scientist almost of your experience, because this is really helpful for us to process, particularly something as painful as that's happened in our society. It's really noticing our experience here. And the invitation is to really couple that presence with investigating discomfort. So this is kind of the somatics of breaking bias, the somatics of this work of DEI. So again, becoming that scientist, what is the discomfort? What are the felt sense experiences? Is there pressure? Is there tension? Are there stories attached to the present or the past? And if that comes up for you, maybe even write them down. Be really useful to really kind of move ahead this time. And then of course, privacy and confidentiality. My hope is that everything that's shared, that's learned here goes out of here. But of course, anything that's shared, that's confidential stays here. So I hope we can all agree to that. I'll just read what Riley shared, which is lots of their friends and families live in scary states, and I'm struggling on how to support them. Perfect. Welcome, Riley. So I'd love for you all to just do another short reflection, just sharing in the chat, as you kind of step back and center yourselves in this particular question. What is healing to you? However you want to take it. There's no right or wrong answer. There's only your answer. And really kind of honoring that in this moment. What is healing to you? So there's lots of ways of that. And I'd like to share that healing together is one of the things that's quite powerful, because we are social animals, right? So oftentimes when others are sharing in this way, it allows us to be inspired to focus on this thing we call healing for ourselves, for our teams, for our organizations, for our family members, as many of you have shared. So yeah, feel free to share in the chat. What is healing to you? Ooh. I'd love to read a few responses. Zara shared, healing to me is about how I experience wholeness and joy reflected in my inner experience and within my community, even amidst great suffering. Emily shared, healing is getting to the other side of intense pain, grief, or sadness, a place that is lighter and safer. Oh, how beautiful, you all. Yeah, please continue to share these, because this is quite powerful for me to even read, I'm sure for all of us to read. Because then we kind of have that aspiration for ourselves as we move through these turbulent times. So feel free to continue to share. Carol is tapping into experiences that create and inspire spaciousness. Wonderful. So please continue to share. And I'd love to just share my healing journey, and then kind of break us up into some small groups where we can really process some of this together. So one of the things that most people find really surprising about me is that, here I am, a brown Indian man who's like a lawyer and a scientist and a techie, and he's always talking about like gender equity and racial justice and racial equity. And how did that happen? Well, my family immigrated to the US when I was 10 years old. And prior to immigrating here, the concept of race or racism was just not part of my imagination. However, like being in this brown body, with my name, it became a marker of difference or otherness. And my teenage years were really mired with painful experiences, from being told to go back to my country, to being called Osama bin Laden, to even being physically beaten. But as someone who came from like modest means, I kind of suppressed the emotions, the impact of this to really fit in. And, instead of, basically responding to those situations, or even sharing what was happening to me, I tried to assimilate, to become as white as possible, as much as I could be from the dominant culture as possible. This meant changing my name, distancing myself from my Indian heritage. And in college, I was hired to become a recruitment manager for Teach for America, where I was giving about 5 to 10 presentations a week. So that's a lot a week, on top of my full schedule about educational inequity in our nation. And that's when I really became aware that what I was really talking about was myself, the inequities I experienced going to public schools in New York City. And as a result of that, the work of justice, the work of equity, and racial equity really became a way for me to heal myself. I went on to law school and became a full-blown anti-racist activist. This became my identity. I read everything I could possibly read about the history of race in the US, from Black history to Asian American history to Native American history. And I started identifying with what happened to me, with what had happened to other communities of color, just to various degrees, with the challenges of being Black or being a woman or being Indigenous. And to my young mind, I can now appreciate that what I was doing was, it was feeling that, oh, if there's equity outside, I would somehow be healed. And I just started seeing everything and everyone around me as racist. I was right, they were wrong. And I surrounded myself with friends and people who mostly agreed with me. And in that process, I argued, I fought, I was sarcastic. I would go home and look at myself, and I would see like wounded soldier. And the wounds became so deep that it affected my social relationships, and on top of that, it affected my physical body. I used to have 2 to 3 sinus infections a year, minimum. I would break out in hives, and emotionally, I was depressed, super anxious. And 12 years ago, that led me to really take my life. I had this moment where I was going to jump off. I lived on the 18th floor of a Midtown Manhattan apartment. And it was in that moment when I stood on the ledge of my window, still contemplating jumping off, I thought, I can't go on like this. I have to stop. I have to stop. And just then, the universe delivered me with this quote that I'm going to share with you all. It was not that moment, but a couple of weeks after that. It's a quote from Thomas Merton, who said, "There's a pervasive form of contemporary violence to which the idealist most easily succumbs: activism and overwork. To allow oneself to be carried away by a multitude of conflicting concerns, to surrender to too many demands, to commit oneself to too many projects, to want to help everyone in everything, is to succumb to violence. The frenzy of our activism neutralizes our work for peace. It destroys our inner capacity for peace. It destroys the fruitfulness of our work because it kills the root of inner wisdom, which makes work fruitful." So just let that settle for you all, because that's what was happening to me. That inner wisdom was pretty much super dim for years and years and years. And it was then, this was now 12, 13 years ago, that I took a break. I was like, I had to recognize I wasn't well. And the question, again, I'd had a mindfulness practice for a while before then too. And the question that I had to ask myself is, what was I hurting from? Mass incarceration hadn't happened to me. Sexual harassment in the workplace hadn't happened to me. Stop and frisk hadn't happened to me. Racial disparities across the board existed. But a lot of what I was activisming about hadn't happened to my body. But I was still hurting from them. But that was connected to something that really happened to me. And that's where I began to really see and recognize this hurt, this pain that I felt as a young child, of being othered, of feeling like I didn't belong in this country, in this communities I was a part of. And also believing some of the messaging I received from others about me. That was the biggest thing. These ideas about me, I started believing. And that's where, I first began to acknowledge that depression is really a disease of the soul. And then from there on, really taking the second chance to start exploring various healing modalities, many of which I teach now, including mindfulness meditation, to really move towards what is sustainable in doing this work of equity and justice and fairness in our society. So, we'll talk a little bit more about that. And I just wanted to kind of preface our time together with my story because, it's really personal, but at this time where we are in this historical moment, I know that my personal story isn't just mine, it's so many of us. And I know that because I've heard so many stories that have inspired me to share my story. And even after I've shared my story, so many have shared their stories with me. So the work of, finding the way to healing for each one of us is so important, particularly now, remembering what Thomas Burton said, really bringing that inner wisdom to light from within, which exists in each of us. So with that, I'd love to actually spend some time to break you all up in like just small dyads to kind of talk about one of these reflections. So again, using these shared agreements of I statements, commitment to dialogue, staying present, investigating discomfort, and privacy and confidentiality, I'd love for you to share. And you don't have to respond. You don't have to try to help anyone else. It's really about sharing, so communicating what's happening for you, and then really bearing witness, being a listener to what's happening to another person. And many of you may not know this other stranger that you'll be in a room with for 5 minutes, and that's okay. But really kind of acknowledging that deeper humanity that you share with everyone who's here. Just like you, they too have that capacity to feel pain and pleasure. So we'd love for you to share whatever comes for you at this moment. What are you hurting from? What are you hurting from? However that lands for you on your spirit, on your body, in your mind. So let me stop sharing my screen. And I'll just break you up into groups of 2 or 3. And we'll come back in about 5 to 7 minutes, and I'll remind you when to switch the speaker, but perhaps have one of you speak first, the other person listening, and then switch over, and I'll remind you when to do that. But once again, really sharing, what are you hurting from? So you'll see an invite shortly. Welcome back, everyone. It's so great to see you all. This is like my least favorite part, which is to break up these very rich conversations you may all have been having. But my hope is that we'll continue to have these conversations together as a group. Let me share my screen for a minute. And I'm just going to put you on mute. just to make sure that there's no background sound. So yeah, just take a few moments to just process, what you shared and what you heard. Again, this doesn't need to be shared by, we don't need to hear it, um, but really kind of taking a moment to really see where that lands for you. And if there's any additional insights that may have come up for you as you were sharing yourself, what did you expect to share and what actually you ended up sharing, but also hearing from this other human who, like you, are also on their journey of healing and all the things they may have wanted to share and then what actually came out. And as you do that, I just want to share, for me, this work is really about um, like breaking bias is what we call the Be More journey. And it's really about supporting teams, organizations, and individuals with specific skills that are really needed to advance equity in our country, in our world. And for me, that's really a 3-stage journey of learn, develop, and propel, which is knowing intellectually why things are the way they are, but then being able to apply them emotionally in our nervous systems. And then as we're learning and building these skills, we're then able to take action. A lot of scientists have actually created metrics for us to measure that. And that's what these 10 competencies are about: awareness, comprehension, optimism, curiosity, skillful communication. This is really important right now. Kind of moving from that phase of calling out, which induces more and more shame, blame, guilt, to either calling in and even calling on, and moving to well-being, collective identity, which is feeling like we're connected to other people across difference, empathy and compassion, and then empowerment and social cohesion. That's what's needed to take action. Social cohesion being not just feeling connected to people across difference, but being able to collaborate with them across difference. And the way to do that is really the PRISM toolkit. This is, what we teach in our courses and our programs, but also what you have access to on your own. It's really rooted in meditation, starting with mindfulness, becoming aware of what's happening in our body, in our experience, and then moving up this ladder to stereotype replacement, which is really about changing those neurotransmitters from negative inferences to positive inferences, to curiosity, which is individuation, to really building empathy and compassion as skill sets. So we can respond to crises versus react. And again, these are trainings. This isn't something we can listen to a lecture from me or anyone else. This is something we're building. It's a muscle that we build over time. The science shows it takes about 8 weeks to build a new habit. So it's really about daily practice to really build these skills. So with that, I'd just love to, open some time for any questions or reflections from you all. From, what this has been like for you, where are you still, like where you are, just coming together as a community. Feel free to chat them if you don't want to speak out loud. You can also unmute yourself, or you could send me a private message and I can read it. Zara, please go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say how grateful I am for this space. And, we started out my group actually by reflecting on how we're all lovingly connected to you, Anu. And that was that was such a healing moment in and of itself. It's like we formed a little molecule around you and this space and and your loveliness. So there's that. But I found that it was so helpful to me to hear from other people sharing about just coping with feelings of hopelessness or being lost. But I'll speak for myself in particular, in that I shared that in my blood family unit, I've been struggling pretty much my entire life with, just their sort of fundamentalist religious streak that creates an atmosphere of like lack of acceptance, particularly for LGBTQIA persons and my family. So my chosen family, and then just as one example, and then on my husband's family, the persistence of really deep white supremacy culture, and like knowing that, they were voting Republican, and knowing that they were like, even prior to having met them, supporting persons whose actions have helped the current, political and policy state to exist, which is so violent against my body. And so I was just sharing that I feel even more at an impasse in terms of like, I've been asking myself, like, do I take action? Do I, write letters? Do I, sit down and try to have mindful conversations with them, even though like I can very much anticipate being wounded. And then on the other hand, because social justice work is what I do, I find myself really exhausted, like, beyond running on fumes, exhausted. And so, yeah, that's what I was sharing that hurts me so badly, because I have a tendency to kind of like want people to join me on a healing journey, and really like expend myself in that effort until I have nothing left for myself. So yeah, that's what I was sharing. And thank you for allowing me to share that here in this space.
Thank you for sharing that, Zara. It's so powerful. And you know that at least 18 of us are there with you that are on this call, but I know there are thousands and thousands and millions of other people that share how you feel right now. You just may not know them and they may not be present with you. There was a really wise woman who presented at the well-being summit, a few weeks ago, who said, when things around us are going very fast, it's a reminder to slow down. Do you remember who that was?
I don't know who you're talking about.
Well, our friends here should know that was Dr. Zara King.
I know. It's a real rubber meets the road moment when you got to take your own advice. Thank you for that reminder, my dear.
Very welcome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Zara. And David shared, also he expresses his gratitude with his Avery. Just feeling the grief and exhaustion of knowing people that actually voted this in. Yeah, exactly. And this is the opportunity to practice, perspective taking and know, what's going on for so many of our compatriots, so many of our people. Where is the heart so closed? And this is a really important moment for us to really, again, build on these skills. Yeah, but I'd love to invite any other reflections or thoughts, so feel free to use the chat before we kind of.
This is Stephanie.
Please, Stephanie, yes.
I really enjoyed my conversation, and I really appreciate being here today. I wasn't sure it'd take it, an hour out of my workday to do this, but being here makes me realize how important that was that I do this. So thank you for everybody. One of the things that I shared, and we had a great conversation about. It's just the sheer feeling of exhaustion was a great point out, and it tears up your body, even like physically. I couldn't go to work yesterday. I was just a mess about it. And there's so many thoughts and so many things running around. It feels like betrayal from the government. I feel alone because I don't know who also has the same thought process as I do. So I kind of want to hibernate and kind of go into myself. And I just think, moving through the emotions, is one of the things that we talked about. There's just so many of them, so many.
Yeah.
That it becomes exhausting, and you don't want to cope. You don't want to deal. You just want to, go in your bed and hide underneath the covers, because part of me feels like, what's next?
Yeah.
Right. And I also feel like I talk about it too much now. It's so present in my mind that when I'm with other people, it's always comes back to this conversation, because it's so top of mind for me that I know that I'm driving my friends a little crazy, but I can't stop it, right? Because this is just all encompassing for me right now. So I really appreciate sharing that. And I just want to tell you all how much I appreciate you just listening and you guys being here.
Thank you for sharing, Stephanie. And this is where the rubber meets the road, is Zara shared too. And I don't know what it's like to be in your body, to experience this. But there are two things I sometimes find comfort in, and I did on Friday and Saturday and Sunday. One is in those moments where my mind is just everywhere and I can't even control it because I just don't know where it is. I take my hand and place it on my heart. And I just breathe for as long as I need. And just one mantra: I am here. I am here. I am here. And this is what I did. This was part of my healing journey after, depression, which is, I don't care who dismisses me. I don't care who in the world betrays me. I will not do that to myself. And the other that I found really helpful is actually building a basically board of champions. So these are, probably activists who are champions of women's rights, of gender equity, Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou's, Gloria Steinem. You think of all the people that have inspired you, but having them somewhere visible. So know that our struggle continues. Of course, this isn't going to solve all of those emotions, but it's just a little bit of comfort in those moments.
Those are great ideas. Thank you.
Yeah. So just two ideas. And I know that we're almost at time, but I do want to share. Let me share my screen. So just in terms of some next steps, I'd love, if you're not already, please join our community, follow us on social at Be More with a New, and also enroll your organizations in Breaking Racial Bias program. If you'd like, just check it out at bit.ly/break racial bias. This is where we really train, teams and organizations, not just with the course materials of learning these things, but really coaching them on how to apply all the learning, being in community, building a meditation practice, and of course, having metrics, which is so, so important around really advancing action. So please do, and reach out to me or any of my team members if you'd like to learn more about this program. The other is save the date. You're the first ones to find out today, but we're going to be doing our inaugural Breaking Bias Summit. So we'll be doing lots of publicity around it. Some of you will invite to even speak. But we have Dr. Letha Maybank, who's the Chief Equity Officer of the American Medical Association, and Sharon Salzberg, who will be keynoting this event. And then there'll just be a lot of workshops and tools that we can support people with, particularly applying mindfulness to dismantle systemic racism. So please save the date, November 3 and 4, it'll be a virtual conference, and really invite your communities to be a part of this celebration. Some best practices after our session together. I'd really take 15 to 30 minutes for recovery. A lot might have been stirred up, even if it was a short conversation. So perhaps get embodied, go for a walk, do a stretch, drink lots of water, but just let this integrate. Just bringing up all these emotions to surface. Even if it's 5 minutes, I really beseech you on that. And then of course I'll stay after our time together if there's any other questions. So let's actually end with another breathing exercise. I'd just love for you to come back to that seated position. You can bring your eyes to a gentle close and placing your hands on your lap or on your knees and just feeling a sense of gratitude for yourself, for making the time to join today, to being vulnerable, to listening, to feeling in a room with so many people you may not have known, but who too are feeling with you. And then just expressing that same gratitude for all the other ones who've joined here with us, but also everyone out there who, despite what's happening, what has been happening, are marching on, doing the work towards all of our freedom and liberation. And then just before we close, I'd just love to invite you to reflect on one thing you can do for yourself as you commit yourself to your own healing in these troubling times. And just notice, first thought, best thought, whatever comes up in your mind. If it's like taking you to the spa or going on to jump on a trampoline, whatever it is, just one thing you can do for your healing at this time. Just really noting that down. And then after your next exhale, you can bring your chin to your chest, stretching the back of your neck, and you can open your eyes. I just want to close with one quote from the Buddha, who said, "You can search throughout the entire universe for someone who is more deserving of your love and affection than you are yourself. And that person is not to be found anywhere. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Especially right now, each one of us." So would love for you to share, as closing, just one commitment that you have, whatever came up for you, if you're willing to share, just to inspire all of us in this conversation around healing. One commitment for your healing. I just noticed David's thought too. Yeah, thank you, David, for that share. It's beautiful. And I'll stop here. Thank you. And I'll read off some of our time together. More time spent by the ocean and with beloveds. Yes, may it be so, Zara. Moving at my own pace, may it be so, Avery. Ensuring to eat well and meditate. Yes, Jana. And yes, thank you also, Emily, for joining. Well, thank you all so much for being here. If you have any other questions, I'll stick around for a few minutes. But yes, much gratitude to you all. Please take really good care of yourselves, and yes, we're in this together, and I'm just an email away. If I can help you in any way, please feel free to reach out. Thank you all. Thank you. Bye, Jana. Bye, Shruti.
I was going to stay on if you had a couple more.
Oh, yes. Oh, let me stop recording.